My name is Ando, and I'm an artist, a photographer, and a member of the Undergang. Every week, I sit down with an artist, a curator, a musician, an author, or anyone else working in the creative fields, and we talk about their work, their life, and what it takes to keep fighting the good fight in our world today. Welcome to the Undergang Armchair. All right, ladies and gentlemen, members of the Undergang, hello. If episodes were years, this podcast would be a quarter of a century old. But in fact, episodes are just episodes, and we've reached number 25. And we're happy about it. We're really happy. Today on the show, we've got Mette Kit Jensen, another talented Danish artist. We had a really nice talk with her. She has kind of an outsider's perspective who's worming her way on the inside as we speak. And to me and to us, that is always an interesting point of view. We've known Mette for a while. I actually had a show with her, I think in 2011. We showed together, and she was very keen to talk and to meet people and to network, and just kind of kept in contact ever since. So it was kind of natural to come and invite her on the show. She has a show right now, or a work, at the Roskilde Contemporary Art Museum, which I found out is the first contemporary art museum in Denmark. They actually have a really good profile. I promised to go visit. I haven't done that yet. I will. Hopefully when I get back to Denmark, actually. So, and I've heard about a lot of shows they've had there, a lot of interesting artists. They're into showing younger artists. So, shout out to Roskilde Contemporary Art Museum. I am definitely going to go see that. But like I was saying, Mette has a piece at Roskilde, which is an audio tour of both Roskilde, the town, and Europe, and travels. She has a whole concept, flaneuse. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that right, but you'll hear about it in the talk. And this project is really a extension of that. So it's an audio walk-around piece, not actually in the museum, but in the town. And I imagine it's well worth going and visiting and seeing. So we're in Italy right now, still. This is our first episode recorded away from the home base in Copenhagen. We've been doing Easter, and it's been treating us well. It means I haven't seen a lot of art, but I have been eating a lot of good food. And, speaking my circus Italian, I want to say welcome to the new people. I see some people coming and listening. I saw a lot of people coming and checking out the Jacob Ausebol episode. I'm happy to hear that, and I think it's one of the good ones we have. He's a great person to talk to, so welcome. I hope you guys check out some more of the episodes, and I hope you kind of join us in our online discourse, checking out our website and our Twitter and all that, which I will tell you guys about at the end. All right, I think I've run my mouth enough. Please enjoy the talk with Mette Kit Jensen.
He loves nurses. So.
Yeah, that's actually funny. My cousin's grandfather, when he went to the hospital, he was always like, "Yeah, what's up, nurses? How you guys doing?" He just loved it. Did you grow up in Greve, though?
Yeah.
Greve, what's that like? What's it like growing up there?
It's a total suburb.
Yeah.
It's tough. Are we on now?
Yeah.
Okay. No, Greve is like it's a pretty tough suburb. At least it was at the time when I was a teenager.
Tough as in kind of rough and working classy and...
Yeah. I wouldn't even say working class. Like this area south of Copenhagen is the most expanded area from the beginning of the 60s.
Right, when they started tearing down buildings here in town and sending people out.
No, it was more like there was all this farmland there, and people wanted to go and live in the countryside, and so the farmers started selling out the land, and they built it like really fast. They were selling the grounds to the people for like nothing. I think it was like 10,000, 12,000 kroner. You could buy a ground and then build a house by yourself.
$2,000. That's nothing.
No, and my daddy did that, and he was the kind of person who works in an office and who was not very practical, but he was building this house and
by himself?
By himself, yeah.
That's awesome.
My mother and everybody was helping him, and this was like normal,
I guess it's kind of a neighborhood effort. The neighbors would come help on a Saturday or that sort of thing.
But it's like everybody was building there at the same time, So it was like people who were like, normally maybe working class who could finally afford to have a house, and they were building it up. And
okay, so it wasn't like Ishøj, which has all the concrete block apartment buildings.
It was family houses.
Okay.
And when I think about it, I think it's actually pretty tough that they did it, like both my parents always worked full time.
Right.
But then they were building this house in the weekend.
Right, I can't even get it together to paint my apartment.
No.
And they built a house.
They built a house. So we, this is where I grew up, and it was like completely uncultured world. Like,
did you dislike it from an early age? Did you feel like it wasn't right? Something wasn't right there?
Oh, I think when you're a kid, it's what you know about it, so it's normal for you. I think it was a little bit special because my parents were quite, they were reading newspapers. They were very interested in politics and stuff, and I don't recall that anybody else in my class were reading newspapers.
Really?
Or discussing things, and my mother was pretty progressive. She became the leader of the first kindergarten in this area. And she was much older than the other mothers, and she had an education. And the other mothers were like 18, being a housewife when they got their first child. So I think she was sort of a role model for a lot of women there.
The matriarch of Greve.
Yeah. I remember when I was a teenager, I didn't like it anymore. I was feeling sort of lost.
Right. I keep hearing about this. It's kind of occurred to me how funny it is that, it's a cruel twist of irony, really, that people of that generation maybe grew up in the city in Copenhagen, and they dreamed of getting out, of building a house in a quiet suburb, the birds and the ocean and, out of city life. And they did, and the dream was realized, and then they had kids, and the kids grew up hating that place and wanted to move to the city.
Yeah.
And that just seemed to happen so much that there was this whole like utopian ideal. Someone, a guest was telling me about there was a song in Denmark, a popular song about moving to the countryside and the birds would be singing. I forget the name of it.
Oh, probably lots of these kind of songs.
Yeah, because there was just this time where it was idealized to do that. That was suburban. It was the same in America. The suburbs exploded in the 50s and 60s. But no kids want to, their kids then said, this is terrible. We have to get out of here.
Yeah. But I think for the generation of our parents was like the idea of having your own house, And of course there was nature, and we went to the beach, and there's a nice beach there. But sometimes when I meet like colleagues in the art world and I tell them that I come from Greve, they're like, oh, you're one of those people. Like, people have some imagination that it's like...
what kind of people?
That it's, I don't know, that it's neo-Nazis living, because one of the most famous neo-Nazis, he actually lives there, But, really? Most of the people living there are nice and normal, and...
It seems to me like not any other, but just like a normal suburb where families live. So Nazis come from Greve, or neo-Nazis in Denmark?
Yeah, that is one. He lives there.
Oh, well, yeah. But did you then, when you were a teenager, say, I'm getting out of here, I got to go to the city, I got to go to Copenhagen?
I don't know. I think like most teenagers, I was just like sort of in a coma in the beginning.
Right.
Like,
I'm just anti. I don't like any of this.
Oh
but
no,
I don't know
I'm
what
just
to do.
tired or sleeping all the time. And what is life about?
Right.
And then when I got older, actually I moved away from home when I was 16 because I went to a boarding school.
That seems to be very common here in Denmark.
Yeah, I think a lot of people did that.
Where'd you go?
I went to Ribe in Jutland. It's ungdomshøjskole for youth folk high school.
Was it good?
It was good, and I met people from all over the world, all over the country, and you sort of got new contacts. And for the first time in my life, somebody was teaching art, somebody was teaching literature in another way. We met like real writers who came there, and
right. It's funny how a world opens up in front of you. Then all of a sudden,
yeah.
Wow, you can do this. You know?
Yeah. It was very nice.
Is that where you decided to, or became interested in arts?
I think maybe that's where I became. I mean, my mother was always very creative. She always did things, but without knowing about art, she was very. Beside her full-time job, she was like doing pottery and all kind of stuff. So I sort of grew up with like using my hands and being creative, but I didn't know anything about. And when you get older, you sort of figure out that there's a context about it, which you don't know about, you know?
Right. And that's both beautiful and unimaginable. That idea that like when you're a kid, you just make stuff for the sake of making stuff, that it's fun. And one day you realize, oh, there is this whole context, like you say, of continuing to do this, but in an adult manner, you know?
Yeah. But somehow I always wondered why, because in the school you learn about literature and you learn how to analyze it and look at different kind of literature. But with the visual art, it's like absolutely, there's nothing about it. So I think that's why most people are pretty old before they develop some sort of idea about the visual art.
See, I was lucky there. We started really early, but I come from kind of a hippie area in California, so there was a lot.
It was all over.
Yeah, like my friend's mother, who was an artist, was the art school teacher, you know. So not only would she teach us art school, then I'd go home to his house after school to hang out and see her painting studio and, you know, kind of, oh, that's her job. This is what she does kind of idea. But I know that that's kind of exceptional in a way. It's not so many that had that opportunity.
No, I've been lucky.
Yeah. But where did you start really imagining yourself being an artist with the capital A?
Oh, I was pretty old. You know, I went to the school, and afterwards I moved to Copenhagen. And I was living in Copenhagen, and it was in the 80s where there was a big unemployment. We were so many people sort of hanging out, doing nothing. And
did you have any idea? I mean, did you want to go to university? Did you have any idea about what to do?
Yeah, no, I don't. I was told in the school that I was a very good student and I should go to university, and I had very good notes. So I was thinking that maybe at a certain point when I could put myself together, I would go to university.
One day I want to. One day.
Right. But then I met some people doing art and music, and I was sort of hanging out, but not really, and not feeling very secure about it, because there was nobody in my family who ever did art, or it was somehow something you couldn't really do. I remember I met a guy who studied in the art academy, and he said, "Why don't you come visit me someday and see what we're doing in there?" And I was like, "No way. I can't go into an art academy. This is not
this is the wrong place.
This is way too fine for me, or something like this." You know? And then I was like,
was that like a class thing? That was a different class of people who did that, and you didn't belong there?
Yeah, I think it could be something like this. You know, I grew up in a very socialistic family, and when we're like we got this. Which I think now, like, very nice values about solidarity, but it also means that if you go into areas with people who are not similar to yourself, you start feeling insecure or something like this.
Right. Well, there is that whole idea too in Denmark about, you know, janteloven, the whole concept of you shouldn't think you're better than other people. You shouldn't, you know, and I know it's not 100% like that in Denmark, but there is some sort of past with this idea that we're all in this together and no one should stick out because we are together and you're not better than anyone else. The group is better than you. Consensus society, etc., which I guess makes it hard to want to do something which is different.
Yeah, that's true. And at the same time, we have a system, like we have a educational system that makes it possible to make this sort of jump,
right?
From one social group to another.
Right. There's actually, Denmark has very high social mobility.
But what I've been thinking about over time is that it's okay, it's possible, but it doesn't mean that you will be able to understand the codes when you get into this world, you know?
Sure.
So I think this is why also a lot of people jumps out of university again and stuff, because, okay, you can maybe be the best student, the most intelligent, the most clever student, but if you don't know how to behave in this sort of world, then you have a problem.
Yeah, it's been a crash course for me in that, just in Denmark in general. Different codes, you know, in any society.
Yeah, probably.
So there we are. It's the 80s. You're floating around.
I went a lot partying, meeting people, talking to people, and then I started working in the theater as doing props and making what do you call it? The clothes for the actresses and
the sewing and costume design.
At that time, it was possible to make sort of practicum, and I did that, and I was quite good at it. And what I liked about the theater is that there's so much about communication.
Right.
And I was fond of writing. I was fond of using my hands. I was fond of everything. And then especially in this role, you had to communicate with everybody all the time. And be in between the practical stuff and the artistic stuff. And it worked quite well. Then I started at a certain point to study in the university. I studied science of literature. And I was there for 3 years, but I never finished. I never made it.
Me neither. Yay, university dropouts.
Yeah. Well, I don't recall anymore what is coming first and in the middle and afterwards, but I was also, which was very important for me, I went to Holbæk Kunsthøjskole.
Okay, an art
folk high school.
Yeah, folk high school. It's a good word.
Well, it was like the very first time where I really learned about contemporary art.
Was this the kind of thing where they said, here's a paintbrush, here's some paints, here's a canvas, here's negative space and positive space, you know, very just foundational?
No, it was because this was what I knew a little bit from gymnasium, and I had been trying to paint before, like from the fact that, okay, if the blue is cold, I need to paint the background blue. Right. And the red is in the front. And I mean, I was looking at it and I wondered why there didn't come any art out of it, you know? Right. But I think when I came to Holbæk, I realized that maybe it's more a matter of if you have something to say or what you want to say or how to express yourself, you know? So, so I was there, but still I didn't have the guts to apply for the art academy. I still had this feeling this was not for me. So I started in university right afterwards. Okay. And then
Did you want to be a writer?
Yeah, I was thinking maybe I wanted to be a writer. But I mean, if you want to be a writer, don't ever start studying science of literature. Because I think after I quit, I haven't been feeling so much for reading fictionary literature anymore.
Is that just because they absolutely beat it out of you with their
they do. This is not what you are not being educated as a writer. You are being educated as a person who can analyze it, you know, and knows about
academic and criticism and
But I mean, it was interesting, and I think somehow I'm still using it as an artist. Some of the things I learned there. There's a certain a way of looking analytical on the world, which of course affected me.
Right, and which in theory is a good thing.
Yes.
Being analytical about your life and about your work and everything.
Yeah. And I think somehow I still have this thing with theory. It's really interesting to read. I think you have to read it and then forget it again, so that it's in a way.
I'm good at that.
It's in your. You have it somewhere in the back of your head, but if you try to make art from theory, it's not working so well most of the time. Yeah,
that's the thing. I have a hard time with theory because it's one of those things. I start reading it, and then my brain immediately starts thinking about something else, and then I just kind of keep going back again and realizing, oh, I didn't absorb anything I just read, and then I go back and read it again, and immediately my brain's like la la la, just trapezes away. I can't focus on it. It seems so unreal in a way, even though I enjoy good theory and interesting ideas. It's rare that it's written in a way which is engaging enough to keep me there.
But I think it's sort of part of our job as artists to sort of keep updated on the relevant discussion concerning your specific work, So
yeah, I should. I feel like that about university. One day I'll go.
Like my nephew said, I will do it maybe when I get old.
Right. Exactly. When I get old, I will do that.
You will go to university. But then I was like, I was doing all these things. Oh, do I want to work in the theater? Do I want to be a writer? Do I want to be a painter? Do I want this or that? And finally, I just stopped thinking and I started doing something. I did some installations and I started working with installations. At the same time, I worked with the performance group where I was building stuff for them. And then when I was like around 30, I finally decided that I wanted to be a visual artist.
Was it a conscious thing to stop worrying about it and start making installations? Did you have to tell yourself, okay, I'm not going to overanalyze this anymore?
Yeah, I think so too, because I've been spending so much time thinking about which school was the right school for me, and then I just, you do it. There's also artists who work without going to art school and it works for them. It's just a matter of having like the trust in yourself, which I till that point didn't have,
Right.
And then I decided that maybe I should give it a try and try to apply for the Art Academy. But before I would apply, I wanted to talk to somebody in there. So I went there and I talked to a professor and he looked at me and then he said, you know what, if we don't take you, maybe it's because you're too old. And I was like, what? It never occurred to me that first that I could be too old. I was 30.
Right.
Second, that there was something with age who had anything to do with doing art,
Right.
But I was happy you told me because then I knew.
Right. Oh, it's that kind of party. I see.
Yeah. And then I applied and I didn't get in and maybe my work wasn't good enough.
You just never know with that sort of thing.
You never know. But then, or maybe I was too old. I don't know. But then I heard that in Germany you can just go to the Art Academy and ask a professor if he wants to take you in his class for a year. So I decided to go to Düsseldorf because I knew some people in Düsseldorf. But on the way to Düsseldorf, I was in Hamburg visiting some friends who were in the Art Academy there. And they made the biggest party and it was so much fun. And everybody I met there were completely friendly. And when I finally came to Düsseldorf, I couldn't find any of the professors. And I realized that this Art Academy was already sort of, from my perspective, sort of a bit outdated. It was still painting sculptures, where the Art Academy in Hamburg were having a really conceptual line. So I start on the way back again. I stopped in Hamburg and I start showing my portfolio to people there. And they had no problem with the fact that I had been studying literature, that I had been working in the theater, that I was sort of working in all fields. They thought it was great. And I was saying, okay, there are different art academies in the world. There is a place. Maybe this place is for me,
Right.
So I ended up staying there 7 years.
7 years?
Yes.
Wow. You enjoyed it? Did you enjoy all 7 years?
No. No, the first year was so terrible that I thought I need to stay longer to make it good again.
Right. Yeah, but okay, so you finished. You graduated from that school.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think it is true. Art school is not just art school. It really depends on the school, and it depends on the individual teachers you work with. You got to find somebody who fits your, what you're trying to learn, essentially.
Yeah, and maybe you don't. I mean, I didn't know what I wanted to learn, but somehow now when I look back, I think that I might have been looking like a really confused young person, but everything I did have now a meaning to me.
Right.
When I look back, it's like...
Right, and hopefully someone recognized that along the way and said, okay, hey, here's something that can be developed and can be worked on. And, that there was a reason, in your mind, you were so confused that it was hopeless. But to someone from the outside, they saw, okay, here's something, there's a through line here, there's ideas behind it.
Yeah, maybe at least, I think at least I was true to myself.
Right.
Some people said to me, but you can just try to do something else and then you can apply to the art academy. And I was like, but I don't want to do something else. I'm doing this and I just have to figure out what kind of school it is I need to go to,
So did you come back to Copenhagen after you were done?
Yeah, I came back because, the interesting thing was that when I first came to Hamburg, it was like, at that time I was 32, everybody else was 22. Mm. So I was like 10 years older than everybody else, and I was in another country, I was in another language. Mm. So it was like terrifying in a way. There was nobody you could mirror yourself in. But I started working with these themes, and I thought it was pretty interesting, and it was a good chance. It's a good starting point for doing art, I think, that you're in a complete limbo and that you are in a totally new situation.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, being out of control in a way is good.
Yeah, and being a little bit freaked out and have to reinvent yourself in a way. But it was also very hard. And I remember in the end I got these stomach edges, which was like so terrible that I thought, oh no, I can't. If I stay more than 5 years in another country, then I'm an immigrant. And I don't want to be an immigrant. There was something about it,
Right. Right. You're no longer just there hanging out. You're actually living there.
Yeah. And you realize that it will be difficult for you to get a job because you're not like native speaking. Right. And all the skills, which are like what I'm good at. I'm good in writing. I'm good in communicating. But in another language, you're suddenly not so good anymore. And like, I was thinking, maybe things would be easier for me if I go back.
Right.
But
it must have been a shock to come back, though.
Yeah.
You've been gone for all those years.
Yeah, actually, in a way, it was even worse to go back.
I guess
now it all sounds so tragic, but
that's the good thing about being young. You just do it anyways.
Yeah, but the thing is, I wasn't that young anymore. When I came back. I
think you were ahead of the curve. 30s are the new 20s, and you were just doing that 10 years before everyone else. I'm a very slow developer too in terms of that, like figuring out what the hell it is I want to do and everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you came back and it was I assume that you didn't really have a network. You had maybe some old friends.
And you meet people in the street and you have the feeling that they consider you a total loser because they haven't seen you 7 years.
Right. And that person hasn't been around, so they must be doing bad.
Yeah. And this was like, okay, you don't get invited for shows, you don't get money for your projects. I even had a problem getting my German, academic degree.
Your degree, yeah.
Accepted in Denmark. So I was spending 2 years discussing with a certain committee about it, and then finally I got the allowedness to write 40 pages in the Art Academy in the the Department of Art Theory.
Yeah.
So that I would have the same master, which I've in a way already had. It's just like in Germany, you don't do so much writing. But so I was half a year in the Royal Academy.
But you didn't get a degree from there. You just got...
I got a Danish. Now I have a German degree, a diploma, and I have a Danish master.
Oh, okay. So they actually gave you that just for being 6 months.
Yeah, I had to write
Finishing
40 pages of art theory, but it was very interesting actually. So
that was good.
I got something out of it.
Okay.
And I used it. I was teaching full time.
They're really strict about that stuff. I actually originally moved to Denmark to go to the art academy in my brain. I mean, I had no physical plan, but that was my idea.
Yeah.
And I showed up, and the way I've always done things in the US is gone through the back door, you know, like you did, meet a professor, talk to them, get a foot in the door before I even apply. And no one would talk to me at the art academy. And I kept wanting to talk about the fact that I'd already done 3 years of art school. And they didn't want to talk about it. They didn't care. And I was like, well, I'm not going to start over. No way. I'm not going to do 6 more years of school. But they wouldn't even talk about accepting credits from another institution or any of that. They were completely closed to the idea.
Yeah.
Which was kind of shocking for me. Because, I mean, I understand on one side they want to have complete control over the students they create and keep a high standard. But at the same time, I mean, life isn't like that. You know, that's also why they want young people only, is because they want to help shape them from an early age. And I guess the idea is when you're quote unquote too old, they can no longer make you into what you're going to be, you know, which is really arrogant in a way.
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, Denmark is not the biggest country like in the world. And what I was told in Hamburg, you know, when I went to talk to the professors and they asked me what I've been doing before, and I was telling them, I studied in the university and I did this and that, and now I want to do the visual art and I want to work seriously with it. And they were like, I heard more than twice that people told me, you have to know that you have a sort of a handicap, that you come from such a small, undeveloped country, you know? And then you come back and you meet people being completely arrogant about that you didn't study here.
Wow.
So, I mean, this is also, it's all,
tragedy.
Of course, it's all bullshit, but
still, I mean, you know, that's a tragic comedy right there.
Yeah. And, it also proves that artists are not always the best people. Like, I think I had this imagination that, okay, if you study art, you will be like free. You will be a free person. And in a way, you realize that the art world is even worse than the rest of the world concerning like age, sex, all kind of...
right, there's just as many systems.
Yeah, of course there are.
Well, I guess in size, if it's so small, that really harms the diversity of it too. There's basically no foreigners working in the Danish art scene. If there are, they're German.
Oh yeah, they have some now. I think they have. But I
it's
remember.
Not many.
No, maybe not.
At least as far as I've seen.
But I mean, in Hamburg, they were like, I remember we counted at a certain point. There were 32 different nationalities in the art school. People coming from all over the world. Mm. And if you could meet, you could meet a Turkish person studying in the architecture department. And I think that these two cities are about the same size and maybe the same amount of people living there. But
Hamburg and Copenhagen.
Yeah. Hamburg might be a little bit bigger. But I always feel that Hamburg is much more of a metropole because it's more international.
Right.
And people get easier integrated and easier. It's interesting to talk about this intercultural exchange where you have the feeling that Denmark is a tough country to penetrate. And I mean, I was thinking when I came back from Hamburg and I had this experience of feeling completely outside everything, I was thinking, I even speak the language, you know.
Right now,
I even know
everywhere.
people here and I'm born here and imagine to be a foreigner and come to Denmark. I mean, That can't be funny.
Yeah.
But now it gets so sad. I didn't
well,
mean to.
No, it's interesting, and I think it's definitely worth talking about. And I think it's getting better here.
I think so too.
In the 7 years I've been here, I'm seeing it get better, but it's slow going. But I mean, you're here. You're still here, so somehow you made it work.
Yeah, and I just continued. And
so, I mean, at that point, were you sure that, okay, I want to work as an artist, and goddamn it, I'm going to work as an artist. I don't care if I feel weird, if I don't know anyone here and my network's no longer together, et cetera, et cetera. You just said, I'm going to work as an artist.
Yeah, I'm going to work. And I still had a network in Hamburg, so I did a lot of things in Hamburg.
Kind of kept a foot in the door over there.
Yeah, and just continued working. And I think now it starts, it's 10 years now.
Okay.
And now it starts working for me.
Right.
I get invited for good shows, and I get invited for group shows, which is like, most people want to have solo shows. I'm desperate to get into group shows because I want to get to know the other artists,
Right, hang out and talk and everything.
Yeah.
Well, that's how we met each other. We were both in a group show, I don't know, 3 years ago?
2 or 3 years ago.
Something like that.
Yeah.
I have 2 really funny memories about you. The first one is you said, you told me, first of all, that your parents they were just starting to understand what it was you did. They didn't really, they were still kind of like, well, she's an artist, but,
But they always accepted whatever I did, but it's not like,
it's not the same as understanding.
No, but now my daddy is totally proud of that I have this show in Roskilde right now.
Right.
He's sort of promoting me in the neighborhood and telling everybody that yes, you go and hear it and see it. And so
right. Well, what people need to realize too is being an artist is being self-employed.
Yeah.
Just like if you're a graphic designer or an author or, and it keeps coming up. It's very strange that artists and art has to defend itself constantly. A musician never has to answer why I make music. Maybe they do for fun, but no one's like, you're wasting your time. You should contribute to society or something like that.
Yeah.
Whereas art has to defend itself and defend its own worth constantly.
Yeah, maybe because it's the most open artistic field. Could that be?
Music or art?
No, the visual art.
Right, that it's decentralized in a way.
Yeah. It's more difficult for people to understand what you're doing unless you're a painter.
Right. Well, you've chosen a path too, which is very, I don't want to say it's non-traditional because to me it's normal enough, but I've been kind of inside of the art context for 15 years now. But, if you just meet somebody and say, I'm an artist, they go, oh, do you paint pictures? Do you make sculptures? Do you, And you make all sorts of things. And rarely is it a physical something you hang on the wall.
No.
And if it is, it's an idea you're hanging on the wall.
It's conceptual and it's in the public space most of the time. So
right. And did you develop that interest early in working in the public space?
I think so. It happened I think most things happened coincidentally.
Yeah.
In the Hamburg Art Academy, there was not much space. The system, this is also very different from Denmark. If you get into art school, you get sort of help and nursed and everything. In Hamburg, it's like this. Okay, you get accepted to art school, but it doesn't mean that you have a class or that you even have a chair to sit on. You know, so you have to walk. And they had an open structure at that time, which I thought was really interesting. That you could just go wherever you want and talk to whoever you want. But it was also a bit confusing because there was not enough space for all the students who they took in. So I was most of the time working at home. And at a certain point, there was every year, there was this yearly exhibition. And you have to decide 2 weeks before which wall you wanted to show on in the school. And you had to apply for this wall. And I was working spatial. Was it any wall in the school, or was it an exhibition space? No, there was any wall in the school. Okay. But I was working spatial. I have been working in theater, so I was working big, Mm. And I didn't want just to have a wall. So at a certain point, I bought a camping wagon.
This is a great story already.
And I took everything out of it, and I made an installation inside, and I was figuring out how I could put it in the parking space. So that people would have exactly the right view into the window when they came out of the door. And I was sort of calculating with this how to put it in the right place and everything. And even there were wheels under, so that if the what do you call the person who's in charge of the practical stuff in the school? Oh,
the janitor, the building manager, yeah.
If she was complaining, it was a woman, I could remove it again.
Right.
So I talked to her and I said, I will put it here and then I will apply for the space. And if there's any problem that it's here, I can move it again.
Was there a problem?
There was a problem, of course. And the problem was that I had not been respecting the German bureaucracy of the administration. So the woman who were in charge of the overall planning, she was telling me like, this is totally out of the rules. And I said, but I asked the janitor, and she said it was okay. And then she said, yeah, but I am the leader of the administration and I'm the person to ask. So you cannot do this.
Right.
But the thing is that people really liked it and everybody remembered that I did this thing,
What happened to that camping wagon? Where is it now?
I gave it to an architect student who wanted to do something else with it.
Awesome. I hope it's still out there somewhere.
Yeah, I hope so too. And then when I had to do my diploma, I had the same problem. I don't want to have a wall in the room. And so I didn't know what to do. I was walking in the area and then I went and I saw a little hotel. And then I went in and asked the owner of the hotel if I could do my diploma work in a hotel room. And he said it was okay, but I had to pay for the hotel room. But he gave me a reduced price, and so I did an installation inside this room where I was sort of changing everything a little bit, so that was very subtle. And then all the professors, like 19 professors who were doing your exam, they had to go to this hotel and go into this little room, and most of them were over 60, so they were like, some of them were also a little bit overweight, and they were going into this hotel room, and one of the things was that under the bed there was a lot of sugar cubes, and you have to lay down on the stomach to see all these sugar cubes under the bed.
Yeah.
And it was just hilarious to see all these professors. And I invited them for coffee in the lobby of the hotel, in order to get them to go out of the school. They were not very willing.
What year was this?
It was 2000. It was year 2000.
Okay.
And then the thing was that they all loved it. It was like, for the first time in the whole time I was in the art school, everybody was like positive and thought it was great. And some people asked me if I wanted to stay 2 more years in the school. So they offered me that I could do like what you call Aufbau, some sort of postgraduate.
Okay, yeah. They even offered you a chair to sit in?
No.
No chair.
No. So the one professor said he would take me, and then I found another one, and then I stayed 2 more years. And it was like the best years because there was this positive interest in what I was doing. Right.
And, it's such a reward in a way. You say, the whole idea about art is that you make it anyways, regardless of what people say and who sees it and everything. But it is so rewarding to get that kind of critical response. Not even critical response, but just that people engage with it. People actually come and see it, and it really helps, I think, fill up the batteries for the next dry period of no one coming and seeing what you do,
Exactly. And I think I realized at a certain point that for me, like doing art is, of course, it is my job. This is what I do, but it's something more than a career. It's also a way of, living your life and learning about the world and think about different questions. And so this is I mean, you better do what you're interested in, because it's the only reward you get. You know, it's not a matter of money or success or so. Right. This have to be like your drive.
It's just real nice if someone else comes and hangs out a little bit while you do it.
Of course.
But I mean, okay, so you started very early getting away from the walls of the institution.
Yes.
I assume you did that for other reasons than just trying to make things hard for yourself. I mean, were you doing it? I mean, are you trying to, do you dislike the institution of hanging things on the wall and you're actively trying to get away from that? Or is it more like you just work better in a different space?
It was a different thing. I think it was not some sort of, it didn't came from some critical art theory. It happened by accident. Like, for instance, this thing, okay, there's no space in the school, so I put this thing. But when you realize what effect it has on the people and what kind of reaction you get, I think you don't want to go back to the art institution anymore, because it's so much fun, much more fun, you know, like you get response from different people. You get response from people who don't maybe even know that it's an art project you're doing. And
right.
And some of the people I met when I came back to Denmark, I have to remember to say this, were these people working in public space. And there was two girls, Christine Agergaard and Cecilie Gravesen.
Okay, yeah.
They curated a show called Contemplation Room in Copenhagen, where I met a lot of these people working in public space. And we had so much fun. And it was like, there was communication, there was discussions, there were all the things you miss when you're just putting a thing on the wall, you know, in a gallery. So I thought it was a really nice show. And then I got to know some of the people who works in this field as well, which was very nice.
Right. Having some sort of network and some sort of place to bounce ideas off of and everything.
And in 2007, I did together with Puls Graun, who was a member of the former Gallery Raka. Have you heard about that?
I think that was before I came here.
Yeah, probably. But they Pulsk and Johan, they had a little art space in Gamle Kongevej, and had also been working a lot in public space. And we know each other from different shows and public, I don't know if you call it show projects in public space. And we started talking about it. It's a pity that it's so invisible what has been done there, that people are doing so many great things and nobody really knows about it. And we don't know each other because there's not like this ritual, like when you are doing a show in a more traditional art space. There's a reception, there's a vernissage and things like this.
You're taking part in hundreds of years of established traditions.
So you know your colleagues. But so we made an open call where we were actually invited people to come and tell about their work, and we were staging the place like I think it looked a little bit like a Polish ferry boat or something. How we were we were having a lot of fun, sort of dressing up, changing the space for every event, and people could just write us if they wanted to tell about their projects in public space. And that was really fun. It was really interesting. People were coming and telling about their works.
And people came.
They came, and people really wanted to do it, and it was, I mean, a lot of the best people in the field, but also some people who were totally unknown and who just started doing artwork, and we wanted it to be open for everybody.
Right, nice open field. When did you become interested in your current, I don't know what to call it, you have a current theme that you're working with.
Yeah.
Flaneur, how do you pronounce it?
Flaneuse.
Flaneur.
Flaneuse. It's a female form of flaneur.
Oh, okay. Tell me about this.
Yeah.
Because this is where I met you. You were working on this, and you're still working on it.
I'm still working on it. Yeah, I work on this since 4 years now, I think.
Okay. So what is it? Where did you find this interest, and what is it?
Yeah, it is. The flaneur was originally a person in Paris around 1860, a man. Very often an artist, but sometimes just somebody who was like bored, who had enough money to just hang out in the street and see what was going on there. And at that time there was a new structure of the city. They rebuilt the city, and there were all these passages where people could go, and it became fashionable, or became fashion to walk in the streets and to look at real life and to use it in your artistic practice.
So this was an intellectual pursuit.
I don't know if you call it intellectual.
Or I guess artistically intellectual, or whatever you want to say. Like it was a way to inform something. It wasn't just to do it. It was to do it in order to inform your artwork, for example. Yeah,
or to, I think it was very much driven by passion. You had the opportunity. You could go and look in the street. You could go and watch the real world instead of sitting in your little room writing. And you could write about the real world, and you could see all the things happening in the world. And I like the most famous flaneur was like Baudelaire. Mm-hmm. And they were watching and writing and also searching for, it was sort of a rebellion figure. Mm-hmm. Also some sort of rebellion against the bourgeois life and the family life, and they rather go there, and sort of an existential way of walking in the street, how I see it. But the thing was that they were all men, of course, because women could not walk as freely at that time. I mean, nowadays it's totally different. Right. But at that time, only working class women or prostitutes could enter the public space. That if you were bourgeois, you had to wear voilier. Is that like a veil? What do you call it? Is this the piece? Yeah, a veil. Yeah. A veil that covers your face. Yeah. And the argument was that women were so weak that they would die if they get the dust from right. From the big city. All these prostitutes were not dying of dust. Yeah. So I think it was maybe more a way of hiding them. Mm. But I'm fascinated about the thing. And another fascinating thing is that they started dressing up because they also realized that I'm not just looking at the world is looking at me. Mm. So, some of them were wearing high hats and being more and more flamboyant and extreme in how they were, showing themselves. That became an artwork in and of themselves. Yeah, maybe. And at the same time, there is this, I don't know if it's a myth. I never find it directly the reference saying that it was true, but that they were walking with turtles on a string, right, in order to put down the speed of the wild big city in the 1860s. To engage on a completely different level with the city. Yeah, and also to have some sort of coincidentally generator to tell you where you should go. Right. And it was not like these little turtles, it was big ones. Right. And I heard about this at a certain point and got really fascinated about it. What is it about it that's so fascinating to you? First of all, the thing of walking the street, I always did it, and I always experiencing, and I always wrote it down somehow. And secondly, I think there's something about this. I've been thinking already about this because I did a lot of artwork in the street where I have been involving people in asking them questions and stuff. And the thing of when you're an artist and you go to the street, are you part of reality? Are you not part of reality? Are you stage? Are you distance? Are you, what is your own role when you go there? Right. When I write down a story, I'm part of the story myself, of course. And right, you can never remove yourself from whatever it is you make. No. And then I was at the Danish Institute in Rome, 2 years ago. And then I started studying these references, and I was interested in how had these different artists been flaneuring, and how had they been doing it. And Søren Kierkegaard, for instance, he did it regularly certain times of the day, it was like his job to go and walk the street. And if he met a person he talked to, he would write down what this person was telling him, so that next time he met this person again, he could continue the conversation,
Wow.
So it was like very systematic. And then there was a person like Hans Christian Andersen, who was childish, when he was just wanted to be showering in the crowd of people.
Okay, he liked the attention.
Yeah, and then there was a person like Baudelaire who was so stylish, and I think that he maybe did it too distant from the reality at the same time, because you cannot describe something which is yourself at the same time. And there was a person like Edgar Allan Poe, who is one of the main characters of metropole literature. Mm. He never went out. He was completely afraid of a public space. Right. So I think it's interesting to think about it. So I'm trying to experiment with by doing it. What is it actually?
And how is it informing your artwork? I mean, because your artworks, the ones I've seen, which granted are not that many, but like for instance, the show we were in together, you had turtles as a reference to this. So your work is not only about living that, your work is referencing that at the same time.
Yeah, it's in a way, it's both.
Yeah.
But I see already, like, the work is when I walk in the street. It's sort of an action.
Okay.
I see it as a sort of conceptual action, like walking the street. But I have to find a way to give this experience on to other people, because I think if it's just for me, I'm not so sure it's an art piece. If it's
outside of a context of any sort of public viewing.
Yeah. So and the show I have now in Roskilde, I actually made an audio guide through the city where people can try to walk the same way, like I normally do, and maybe see other things that they would normally see. So I'm experimenting with this thing. I'm also experimenting with how I can walk. Like I was 1 month in Athens, and I was thinking I can't keep just going and do what I want to do. Now I want to make an experiment. How can I walk? So I was because I was in Athens. Of course, we all read about the crisis in Greece, and I wanted to see from street level how it was influencing the people. Mm. So I was talking to the director of the institute, and he told me that if I theoretically wanted to see the whole spectrum of how the population was living, I could take the green metro line, and I could get out in every U-Bahn station on the way. Okay. And he just said it. For instance, if you do this, and I was thinking, okay.
And it goes through different areas of the city, which have different, amounts of money and social class and all that stuff.
Especially, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it starts in Kiafisa, which is in the north, and then it ends in Piraeus. Yeah. And in Kiafisa, you have like haute couture shops in every street corner. You have fitness studio, you have plastic surgery, you have people sitting in the street with cocktails all day long, and I've never seen such rich people in Denmark,
really?
Amazingly rich. Maybe if you go to the backside of the house, you see a person, an immigrant from Africa, collecting garbage to sell it somewhere.
Sure.
And then you take this metro line and you go out, and I decided to go out on every station, walk for an hour and talk to one person. And you see how further you come to the south, that people are more and more poor. And it was interesting because I really got some sort of understanding of where I were,
Right.
But it didn't work as any artistic concept.
Right, because that was going to be my question. Then what? Now you have this life experience, which is, of course, extremely interesting to you personally. But as an artist, as a producer, can you use this information? Or is it more like you just store that in the memory banks and at some point it'll become relevant?
Yeah, I mean, what I did afterward was like actually to do what I had a little bit, okay, now I did my duty. Mm. I gave myself a job and I did this job, and now I know where I am, which I think is also important. It's sort of researching on the site where you are.
Right.
And then I decided just to hang out and see what happened. And then all these stories start coming to me. Like, I walked through a bakery shop in the most exclusive area in Athens. And suddenly out of the bakery shop, there's Christmas music coming. Even it's in the middle of the summer, and there's this Christmas music, like from the 80s, Live Aid, this Feed the World. Do they know it's Christmas time at all?
With every famous person ever at that time.
Yeah. And I thought it was just like, okay, this is actually what Athens is about, these contrasts and how hysterical it is that this kind of music is coming out of a bakery shop full of cakes, like Feed the World. And
right. If you can buy food, you can have some.
So I think, it would be too, it was to be too obvious. What my first idea was, like, to take pictures in every station and make an interview with people. I think, like, doing it in a more poetic way, writing down these stories, would give a more sort of complex.
Yeah, being subtle is really an important tool in cases like that.
Yeah.
Is there a feminist element to this? Because not only do you talk about flaneur and the history of that, but you're very specific in pointing out that you conjugate it, or so it's female. You talk about how it's a female version of this. Is that an important part of it?
A bit.
Or is it more just like, well, I'm a woman, so there you go?
This was my first, this is how it started, Okay, right. I'm a woman, so I must be a flaneuse.
Right.
And then, but actually, and this is what I think is so interesting about this method, but by walking, you figure out things like, are there actually places I cannot go as a woman? Or are there things I cannot do, And, like, the original flaneur was also a very sort of decadent character. He went to bordels. He was like looking all the time for if he could do something promiscuous, or like the French flaneur, like the Baudelaire style. And then I was walking one day in the old Copenhagen, which I know at that time was where the flaneurs went. And I was walking in these areas and thinking, I want to make a project about these places in Copenhagen. And then suddenly I was sitting in Magasin du Nord in the cafeteria, which was also like the department store is also sort of historical site for the flaneur. And I was sitting there looking out of the window and thinking, this is a nice place, a nice view out of the window, but what is it with this department store? And suddenly I remember that there is a myth or a story, probably it's true, that it used to be like this, or maybe it's still like this, that if you're a middle-aged woman, you can sit there and you can put 2 sugar cubes on top of each other if you want to have a sexual contact to a younger man. Or maybe he's the person doing it. It's like, and you can pick up
video.
You saw the video, right?
I saw the video. You built a structure.
I built a whole tower structure, and nothing happened. No, but I was suddenly thinking, okay, this is a little bit pathetic, like, as a female flaneur, this is your options, like.
Right. Well, yeah. So it's very interesting.
So I want to do this thing with some sort of humor, because I think it's the only way to do it. But I think by doing it, and I wanted to do it as open as possible, so that people could start to think for themselves. This is not about, how terrible, there are also male prostitution in the world, or it's not about this, it's just like, okay, if I should really imagine, I should do something. Because sometimes when I told people about this project, especially if I told it to men, like, I'm a female flaneur, they're like, this is about being like sexual promiscuous or something like this. And what I'm doing is pretty innocent, and I was thinking, okay, if I should do something, maybe this could be an option,
Right. So you're essentially In my mind, you're an astronaut of city walking. You're exploring the reaches of what's available, just walking a city, any city.
Yeah.
In a way. You're on the moon, but you're also right here in town.
Yeah, it's nice. In a way, it's nice to sometimes try to think that you've never seen the world before and just look at it from the outside, you know.
Right. Well, that's what drugs do. That's why people do drugs in a lot of ways, you know. But I guess my final question is I consider myself kind of a good average viewer of art in that I have some context for it. I seek it out, but I'm not super critically engaged, and I'm not really super aware of what current contemporary discussion in the art world is, et cetera, et cetera. And so, for example, I saw your video with the cubes in Magazine du Nord in the cafe, and I didn't understand what was going on. I appreciate, for me, it brings back connotations of building stuff, recontextualizing materials, all that stuff. I had no idea about this myth, and that you didn't say, as far as I could be aware.
I wanted it to have the same sort of. That's why the only text which is written there is, there was a rumor about a certain ritual in the department stores of the city.
Right, and I didn't. And
of course, as a foreigner, you don't know. I also talked to people who came from Jutland who never heard about it. But
right. Well, I guess my question really is, do you think about how much, we just mentioned before being subtle is a really powerful tool, but to you, can it be too subtle? Can it be too, because at a certain point, I'm just like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know how to relate to this.
Yeah.
Or is it more like, this is my personal work, so I get to choose?
I think it's a question you have to consider every time. I think in some of the earlier works I did, I was too over-explaining stuff, you know. Mm. And now I think for me, there was one of my friends, she's Peruvian and she lives in Berlin, and I sent her this video around and she wrote me back, oh, this is a really interesting video. It's somehow exciting and sad at the same time, but I don't know what it's about.
Right. and those are the things you start picking up on as a person who doesn't have any idea about this ritual or this place even.
Yeah.
You know. But I'm just wondering if it concerns you to be too esoteric, to be too to not explain it enough.
Yeah, it worries me some, but see, in this case, it doesn't worry me so much.
Right, because if art is communication, there's methods and ways of explaining.
It's like if people think it's stupid or boring, they can leave it for me. You
right,
know,
right.
Maybe this is arrogant, but
no, it's not, because someone has to do that too. To me, artwork can be the most straightforward. People make paintings with the date on it. Yeah. They made the painting, or Ancora did, all the way up to a lot of artwork, which you got no idea what it means, is just some symbols or some feelings, So I don't have a problem with what you do, but it's something I think about. Like, how do you communicate to the audience? Who is the audience? How are they going to engage? And perhaps it's better just to say, screw it. They'll either they're interested or they're not.
Yeah. But I think you can sometimes help. Like when I did this, audio guide in Roskilde, I worked together with Christa, who did the technique, and he's having his own podcast.
Right, the audio technician.
Yeah, and he's used to make radio for the people, right. And he was a great help because he was all the time pointing out, you can't just walk around in the street with a imaginary turtle without explaining where this turtle comes from, because people have no idea.
Right, and might lose interest because they don't know what's going on.
Yeah, and he was of course totally right. But sometimes I think there's also different levels of understanding things, and it could have a completely poetic dimension that somebody walks in the street with a turtle and you have no idea why. It's a balance all the time, you know, and maybe sometimes you're explaining too much, sometimes you're explaining too little, but of course it's a big question.
Right. And it's a matter of the audience. I'm totally the type of person, the reason I'm here right now talking to you is because I'm interested in talking to people and understanding why they do things. So clearly that's how I am, I do want someone to hold my hand. Sure. Well, But let's talk about, so you have this audio piece right now.
Yeah.
At the Art Museum in Roskilde.
Museum of Contemporary Art in Roskilde.
And how long is that available for?
Oh, it will be there for a long time, till the 28th of September.
Okay, so people can go.
Yeah, I really hope they would go there because, again, I can explain and a lot of people know what a flaneur is and I say, I think I know what it is. But of course, it's my personal interpretation of this figure. And what people told me when they tried this audio guide is that the interesting thing about it is that you are walking in Roskilde, but you're walking at another place at the same time. And
right, in Athens and Rome.
You are in Athens or in Rome, so it's sort of a weird experience, which I really hope people would go and take that experience because it's better than explaining everything.
Right.
Or you can also go on the homepage. You can download the sound, but it makes no sense to hear the sound if you are not in exactly this place.
Right. Well, I've talked a long time about going out and visiting that museum, and by golly, I promise I'm going to do it.
That's good.
And
it's a great museum.
To our listeners, you should as well.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that about wraps it up. Do you have anything else coming up?
I think I've been telling so much, so I think it's...
But thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for the invitation.
You're welcome. All right, that's about it. I don't have much to holler about. Oh, I photographed a lot while I was here working on this project, so I got to go drop off my film for developing. Excited to see about that. If I'm lucky, I finish the project. We'll see. Probably not. Never is that way. But I have been exploring and checking out the world of Twitter. And I'm telling you guys, there's a lot of people talking and engaging and showing art on Twitter. I found quite a few new things to look at, including, but definitely not limited to, the paintings of George Bush, former president of the United States. I know the internet's been all abuzz with those, but if you haven't seen them yet, check them out. And really, check out the painting of Silvio Berlusconi, the former PM of Italy. Holy cow. So my question to you guys is there hatred or respect in that painting? Either way, dude's not a great painter, but it's pretty interesting stuff. That's my instant review of that. So also this week, started a Facebook page and immediately closed it. I think it was open for about 7 minutes. Because it's just not going to work for us. You have to use your name, and it's kind of key that we are an organization, not me. So Ondo is no on Facebook. I don't know how to avoid the fact that you have to put your name in, but that's really not the point. So you can miss me with your reasons to be on Facebook. I don't really care about that, but I am interested in hearing if you guys have any other options for social media. We're obviously on Twitter. Twitter is not caught on in Denmark yet so much. So I don't know. We'll see kind of what we find. What about MySpace? Is that still relevant? I mean, I know it's there. I know bands use it. So is that relevant for a podcast, or are we talking like SoundCloud or what? So please let us know if you have any good suggestions. But that's about it. I just want to ask you guys to check us out on our home on the web, undergang.net. Please check it. Check us out on Twitter. Email us. Tell us why we should not use Facebook and what we should use instead. This week's episode brought to you by The Undergang in Italy, Special Edition. Intro and outro music provided by Heavy Links. As always, catch a link to Heavy Links on our About page. Today's interstitial music provided by The Passion Hi-Fi, free beats on SoundCloud. Really cool stuff. We'll put a link up to that on the show notes for this episode, including a video by Mette Kit Jensen, including links to this and that. It will be good. That's it, folks. Thanks for listening. See you in Denmark next week.